Hi, I'm Lilian Joy. I'm Ed Advisor at the University of York, and joining us today are the students from the university to tell us their perspective on accessible maths. The university's got about 22,000 students, and about 17% of them have a declared disability. And this makes it really important for us to ensure that our resources are consistent and accessible so that they can adapt it to use as they need. But we know that this isn't an easy task. So the problem is that lecturers will always want to create the materials the way they want to create the materials. And this means that a variety of formats are coming at the students, from things produced through software that creates web pages, which is great, as well as things produced through LaTeX, Microsoft Office, Google Docs, chalkboard, paper and pen, etc. So the students are receiving all these different formats, and students want to use the content in a way that suits them, whether they're revising or note taking, and they don't always know the best way to adapt some of these formats. So we have a thing around their skill level and their digital capabilities. So just because a student is quite expert at their assistive technology doesn't mean they're going to be expert at using every single format that you throw at them. And of course, to create an ecosystem that allows everybody to make accessible maths requires the right infrastructure, the right tools, the right systems, the right workflows, communications, and training to make it happen. And so, first up, we have Natalie, who will be telling us her particular story.
Hi, I'm Natalie, a maths master's student at the University of York, and I can't see. For me to be able to access my materials, I need the formatting or inference conveyed by formatting to be represented in a symbolic way. By which I mean a screen reader will not identify things such as superscripts or subscripts, which are obviously very important in maths. And likewise, because Braille is only displayed on one line and does not have the flexibility of handwriting, it also needs formatting to be represented in a symbolic fashion. You can see examples of this on the slide, where the top half shows the traditional way of presenting maths, and the bottom half shows my version, which might look slightly different, but is still equally accessible to both sighted and non-sighted readers. There then is also the obvious fact that I cannot read to interpret charts and graphs, so any visual data in that sense also needs to be fully described in order for me to be able to understand it and engage with it. Cordelia, who is the next speaker, will tell you more about how she helps lecturers to make their materials more accessible if they don't have the time or capacity to do it themselves. Though there are some lecturers who have gotten more familiar with the Unicode version of maths, which is what you can see on the bottom image, and can liaise with me more directly. So if you'd like to hear more about my accessible maths journey, please follow the link that is included in this slide and will be shared at the end of the presentation as well. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Cordelia. I'm finishing my PhD here in the York Maths Department. I'm also a graduate teaching assistant, whereby I help lead seminars in various courses, and I am a transcriber. So I provide various bits of disability support, including to Natalie. So I help convert those lecture materials you saw on the previous slide from the general course notes to the formats that Natalie needs and wants. And this brings us to the next point we want to discuss: alternative formats. It's worth making the main document that should work for 99% of your students, try making that accessible in the first place. Cover your accessibility basics, make sure it's navigable. They're nice headings, you can get around the document easily, you know what you're reading when you're reading it. There should be good hyperlinks, things not just saying click here, but make it clear what you're clicking and what that's leading to. For example, there's graph. Tables should be formatted well. There should be sensible color contrast, and a good font should be used. So yes, make sure your first document has got all the kind of basic accessibility ideas in it, because then it will be good for the vast majority of students, and the kind of Natalies of the world may have someone else like me turning up to help convert between them. And so be prepared. There may be the Natalies of the world, there may be other people who have other needs that do require you to tweak beyond that basic level. Bearing that in mind, though, just because you've seen one blind student or you've seen one student with certain needs, that doesn't mean that the same solution you found for one student is going to work for all of them. Each student's unique. The kind of higher end ones may come with someone like me attached, where I will do the conversion for you, and you just have to give me something, including potentially not what you'd give everything else. When I'm doing transcribing for Natalie, I find it very useful to work from the normal LaTeX document rather than just the PDF, because it's a lot easier for me to convert. I can edit it. It makes my life a lot easier. So be prepared that there might be someone who's not necessarily your students coming and asking you for different things, including converting file formats, different file formats, and maybe files you don't necessarily think you would normally share. It's worth having different formats too. So maybe there's one lecturer here in York who has one set of lecture notes in a sans serif font and the other one in a serif font, and different groups of students really appreciate having the option between the two. Overall, just be willing to experiment, try new things, and be prepared that different students will have different needs, and they can come and tell you what they need, and if it's doable, you should be kind of willing to experiment and see what also works for you. No one's aiming to give you loads more work to do. It's also worth bearing in mind students use learning materials in different ways for different activities, and it's always worth asking students what formats they want, and be prepared for students to come and ask you for different formats for different bits during the course. For example, when they're first coming across material, they might want more space between their notes in order to annotate it and write down their thoughts and notes around it. However, later on in the revision period, they much prefer a more condensed version of notes, which is easier to navigate. Students should be making their own notes, obviously, but the way they interact with your notes might change different bits during the course, and you should be aware of that.
Hi, my name's Izzy. I'm a first year maths and physics student at the University of York, and I'm studying with a disability. So one of the things that I'm talking about today is the importance of including your students at the universal design stage when you're creating lecture notes and resources for your course, whether that's PowerPoint or written lecture notes and so on. So one of the things that I'm quite keen to encourage lecturers to consider is that students can develop their skills by being included at the universal design stage. So students can learn to use a variety of different formats, whether that's HTML, LaTeX, PowerPoint, and all these different file formats. So students don't always know why you're providing notes in a particular format, and when it comes to accessibility, there's certain formats that are sort of the gold standard. So encouraging students to take an interest in these kinds of things can be really beneficial. Not just your disabled students, but your non-disabled students as well can learn a lot from using, HTML, LaTeX, and so on. On the flip side of this, if students are involved at the design stage, you can take advantage of their existing knowledge and the strategies that they come up with. Students can be quite innovative when it comes to, using lecture notes in different ways. And I've seen students use all sorts of different techniques for engaging with lecture content. And actually, your current students will go on to become professionals in their field, and they're going to need to learn how to work with disabled colleagues, or if they're going to academia or education, they need to learn to work with disabled students themselves. So actually, if we can equip students with the confidence to create accessible documents and provide image descriptions and so on, that can be really beneficial for everyone, and you can invest in the future of disabled students that you've never even met before. We can also reduce the burden on disabled students to self-advocate throughout the course of their programme by including them at the universal design stage. Students with disabilities have to do a lot of continuous self-advocacy throughout the year, whether that's, lecturers forgetting to upload lecture notes, or, changes to their support plans, changes to accommodation, all these different things, and they all have a knock-on effect on how much work we can actually do towards the programme we signed up for. So if we can include students at the universal design stage and make sure that what we're doing is as accessible as possible from the start, then we can actually reduce a lot of that burden. And seeking out the voice of disabled students in advance actually gives us more control to identify problems before they arise, rather than firefighting. And standardising materials across the department is, for me, certainly a big one. So throughout a typical programme, you might have lecture notes produced as PDF files generated in LaTeX, Markdown, Beamer, PowerPoint, HTML, sometimes even scans of handwritten content or digitally handwritten content. And this is fine for the majority of students, but for disabled students, especially those who use screen readers, it can be really, really difficult to keep adapting to create these sort of strategies that work when the course materials differ so much from course to course, or even within a module. Sometimes there's different file formats. And when the goalposts are moving like that, we have to keep readapting and recreating new strategies, and actually a bit of standardization can go a long way in cutting down some of that extra workload on disabled students. Yeah, as I say, sort of invest in the future of disabled students at the very beginning of the programme design stage, then it will pay off in the long run.
Thank you, Lizzie. I'm Elsa. I'm an online master student. In my experience, I found that it can be easier for a student to explain complex ideas to a peer more easily than an expert lecturer can. And I'd encourage you to look for opportunities to allow students to share ideas about taking notes, study skills that they use, and other things that they find helpful. I've found this very useful in the past. And when you've met one disabled student, you've met one disabled student. I'd like to encourage you to talk to students, talk to as many as you can, and find out how they use your materials. As Cordelia said earlier, the more you work with a variety of students, the more prepared you are to work with more diverse students. There is no one size fits all, and your students will really appreciate it.
So many thanks to our students for sharing with us what they would recommend that we do to help them to use accessible formats. And if you'd like to find out more about what we're doing and what we've been up to, we have an accessible equations website that we share our work on, and the URL is bit.ly/EXS-equations2. And you can find our contact details there as well. Our slides will be shared on that site. And we're also very keen on learning from lots of other universities and further education establishments. And we work with others via our JISC Accessible Maths Working Group. The GitHub site is linked on the slides, and hopefully we'll be able to share that link on the EAMS Moodle as well. So look forward to connecting with people there.